Okay, that worked. Let's see. So about us, New Hampshire UXPA is the New Hampshire chapter of the User Experience Professionals Association. Our meetings are always open to anyone who's interested. There's no membership requirement, and you can always find us on our website, on Facebook, Twitter, and then we have a Slack channel. And I have to update this. I keep meaning to. We have a very active LinkedIn group that's going now, and it looks like from the chat that several of you found us through that, which I'm very excited about. And then our 2022 board, Christine, Cal, myself, Julia, and Tara Walker would like to introduce as this is her first meeting with us. Unfortunately, she's a little bit under the weather, so she couldn't join us, but we're really looking forward to having her involved. Tara is a senior UX designer at B2W Software. So we're really excited to invite her to join the board and learn a lot from her. Just wanted to say a quick thank you to our outgoing board member, Kyle Susi, who has been an excellent leader for the last several years, and we really appreciate all the work you put into this group, Kyle. And I know you joined us and you were early, even in your first time not on the board in a while. So thank you so much, Kyle. There's several good events coming up. So I will drop the links to these in the chat box once we get going. The MadPow Health Experience Design Conference is coming up in April in Boston. The call for proposals ends tomorrow, so I wanted to make sure that we had that out there. UX 360 is February 8th and 9th. It's all virtual. Sorry, my cat is climbing over the desk, so we might have a visitor. UX New Zealand, oh, now he's climbing on the printer. Okay. UX New Zealand is February 16th and 18th. Interaction 22 is March 2nd through 4th. Thank you for appreciating my cat. It makes me feel better about him taking over everything. I can't see my screen. And then Rosenfeld Media is having Advancing Research 2022, March 9th through 11th. And we have some really good job opportunities coming up. I should make a note that these are jobs that I found that were in the New Hampshire area, but they are mostly remote. So even if you are joining us from across the country or the world, they work for you as well. Blackbaud has several research positions open. Bottom Line Technologies has a UX designer and a senior UX designer. Emerson Ecologics in Manchester, this is on site, has a UX UI designer opening. Flex in Hollis has a remote staff human factors engineer position. Fidelity is, these are mostly on site in Manchester, but some do have remote as you get along in the process. This is just a small amount of what Fidelity has posted right now, and I know we have several members who do work there. So definitely check out the LinkedIn group if you want to learn more about these opportunities. And then Pearson, based in Concord, has a senior UX designer. Proximity Labs has a remote UX project manager, and that came directly from one of our members in Slack. So make sure to check the job opportunities Slack if you're interested in that. And then Right Networks in Hudson has a remote UX designer position. If you are looking for a job or looking to hire for a job, please feel free to drop your information, a posting, or your LinkedIn in the chat, or come off mute and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're looking for, or the opportunity. And I can't always see all the...
Can I quick?
Yes, please do.
Share. This is Samantha Bailey Fast, and I am going to put in the chat the link to the posting. I am looking for a senior user experience designer. It is somebody who's going to have to be able to come to an office either in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, Raleigh, North Carolina, or Minneapolis, Minnesota. But I will drop a job posting for senior UX designer into the chat.
Good, thank you. And then Sophia.
Yes, hi everybody. I am not in New Hampshire. I'm on the East Coast also, but we are hiring a lot of remote UX researchers. I will also drop a link in the chat. We have it's a Bixel company called Bixel, and we are a federal contractor. So we are looking for a lot of UX researchers, and I am a UX researcher myself. So to join my team, I'll also, it's all remote, so I'll drop the links. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else that wants to share? Or if you're looking for a job, this is the time to put yourself out there. Great, thank you, Carol.
My virtual hand is raised. My
Yes.
team is hiring for a director of experience design and strategy, and that's at a nonprofit in Boston called Year Up. And I believe the location is flexible as well. I'm looking for the link right now, and I'll drop it into the chat.
Great, thank you. And someone else might have their hand up that I can't find. Okay, if I missed you, I apologize, and feel free to drop the information in the chat. All right, thank you. A few quick notes. We have new sponsorship opportunities coming up this year. We are working on the details and we'll share them next month, but you can also email us at nhuxpa@gmail.com if you would like us to share the information as soon as it's available. And the reason I was asking about how you heard about the event this evening is that we are considering discontinuing our Meetup account and focusing on the Eventbrite and LinkedIn as our main promotion areas. So just to have a heads up that the Meetup will likely not be updated for much longer. And let us know if that's an issue and we will share the Eventbrite information. Okay. And that brings us to Donna. Get my notes. Donna is the principal product designer at MakerX and design leader, speaker, author, and teacher at Mad Mob. Donna is an independent design consultant. She has expertise across the design spectrum, from strategy to delivery and everything in between, and she loves all of it. I've already got a sense of that passion tonight. I'm so excited. She has designed for a wide range of problems across all kinds of industries, with a particular emphasis on information architecture and complex employee experience problems. She's recognized internationally as a leading UX practitioner, and Donna is a regular conference speaker and has written 5 UX related books. And she created UX Australia and ran it for 9 years. Thank you for your service to the UX community. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
So again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will revisit them at the end and see. And yeah, anything else, Donna? Are you good to go?
I am good to go. So I'm going to do a talk without slides. That's probably really disconcerting with the light on it. The reason I'm going to do a talk without slides is that I have not done any research on this at all. I prefer to see a human talking to me than to see a great big, slide with a human in the corner. Even though I know you can do some things with layout, I prefer to actually look at a person. The disadvantage of that can be that, one of the things we use slides for is to kind of orient and follow a bit of a structure of where we're up to in a talk. So, I know there's a downside to it, but I think the humanness of me being here full face overweighs that. But I do, I had prepared it on index cards, and in between, like I'll use my cards as like a section break, like this. So it's kind of like doing that slide where you're like, okay, here's a landing page to reorient. We'll see how it goes. I've done it like this a couple of times. It's not entirely, without research. I've had decent feedback about it in the past. So the topic for tonight's talk is all about how to present design work. And so I showed you this a second ago. The context here, so the kind of work that I'm talking about presenting is things like wireframes, concepts, anywhere between, kind of rough wireframes to high fidelity. The things that I'm not talking about, and very specifically because of some recommendations that I'm going to make later on, I'm not talking about presenting research work. You will be able to take some of the bits and pieces of tips away if you're primarily presenting your research work, but because I'm going to give you some really specific advice, it doesn't necessarily cover research, and it doesn't cover things like brand work where you've come up with maybe a logo design, palette, that kind of thing. Again, because I've got some fairly specific ways of presenting. So I'm really talking about all the kind of design artifacts that we use in our work. So wireframey stuff, high fidelity, low fidelity, wherever we're up to, sketches, that kind of thing. And the other piece of context is that I'm talking very much about presenting to clients and stakeholders and potentially people outside your team. And again, because I've got some really specific suggestions. This isn't about kind of getting feedback from peers. If you need help with peer feedback, there's a really good book. I think it's called Critiquing Design or something like that. I can get the link to it later on. But if you're looking for how to work with your team, it's all well and truly covered. And learning about critiquing within a team is an amazing skill. So I'm very much, all of those contexts matter because my advice sits within those. So let's put ourselves in a situation where you've done a bit of work. It might be, a context where you're doing a chunky kind of project and you've got a couple of times when you're presenting, or it could also be a context where you might be doing an agile project and presenting at something like a showcase or something that's regular. So it could be either of those, and you've done a bit of work and it's time to show that work to people. And most importantly, it's time to get feedback from people. And I think that it's just worth dwelling on that for a moment, because when you're about to present to people, it's really worthwhile thinking about, and we just don't do this sometimes. Sometimes we're like, I'll present because I present. But it's important to go, why am I doing this? And really showing design work shouldn't underlying be about, oh my God, you're amazing, you rock, even though we like it when that happens. It really should be about getting feedback from people who, have something to contribute, so that as a team, you can make whatever you're working on better. Like presenting is really about the feedback, not about the presenting part. So let's say we've got something we're about to show people. You've done your slides, you've done your prototypes. I'm not going to go into that kind of nitty gritty of what you might need to prepare. And you're in either a physical room or a virtual room, and you're about to, here goes the cat. They're very distracting. They only do it when I'm talking to them. You hardly saw that one, but that was the fluffy-tailed cat. You only saw the bottom of the tail, but he was distracting. There are two more here somewhere. I'm yet to have a 3-cat meeting, so if we manage one, that'll be a first. So putting myself back in the flow. So let's say you're about to present to this group. The first thing that I'm going to suggest you do presenting to a group is really understand who's there. So this actually might take a bit of preparation work to understand who's been invited, who they are, how they fit in the project, and what is there, is there anything you need to know about their specialization? Is there anything you need to know about kind of where they might sit in the decision-making hierarchy? How do they behave in other presentations? So it can be a bit of prep work to understanding who's in the room. And if you're about to present to people and there are people who you don't know why they're there or what their role is, before you start presenting, find out. So that might just be a matter of saying, oh, hey, so-and-so, I haven't seen your name before. Can you fill us in on like how you fit in this project? And you might think that people don't just turn up, but to meetings like Agile Showcases, one of the ideas is that anybody can turn up. So you might have people in a meeting who you really don't know who they are. I'm just going to get this cat. Now, the reason I say that it's really important to understand who's in the room and why is I'm going to give you some really specific advice here. What people often do in the presentation is start presenting. What I'm going to suggest is before you start presenting, tell people exactly what you want out of them. Now that could be broad, like I'm going to show you these things and this is the kind of feedback I want from you. And I'm going to talk about feedback right at the end and like how we can set up for feedback. But it might also be as nitty-gritty as saying, so developer, can you keep an eye out for, is this technically feasible? You might say, so marketing person, can you keep an eye out for, does this fit within our brand strategy? So content writer, have we got the right, have we met our tone guidelines? I'm making these examples up as I go, but they'll be different depending on your group. And the reason that this is really powerful is, I'm sure you've all been in situations where you've presented something and you get kind of weird and random feedback. Like people are there for a reason and they have an expertise. If you can tell them what to do with their time, when they get to the end and it's time to tell you something and contribute, they'll be contributing their expertise and not their kind of random opinion. If you don't give people a job, if you don't explain what you expect from them, you get to the end and they're like, oh my God, I've got to say something. Can you make it bigger? The low, and they give you terrible feedback. And I'm sure you've all seen this. But when you ask people to do something specific that's related to, the reason why they're there, at the end, they'll be able to do something specific. And during the presentation, they'll have switched their expertise on in their head. So they'll be like, okay, right, I'm really looking to see whether this is feasible. I'm really watching to see, what I'm meant to be doing. So it also like really helps them pay attention. So that's number one tip. Really make sure that your audience know what you want out of them, which means that you need to go backwards here and know what you want out of them as well. The other thing to do before actually, starting to show the thing is to make sure that they understand the feedback process. Again, I'll talk about feedback at the end, but and just like we set up the context here tonight, that I'm going to take questions at the end, not intersperse. If you tell people how you're going to collect feedback, and I, when I'm presenting design work, always want feedback at the end so that I have a chance to, tell the story in a kind of complete way. In other kind of meetings, not that strict. But if you can help them understand how they can give feedback, then they won't try to jump in and tell you a thing where they feel like they've got to get their thing across. They're like, okay, cool. I know I will be heard. There is a way for me to be heard. There's a way for me to contribute. So make sure that you let them know what that's going to look like. And then you've got an audience who is like really switched on and like, okay, cool. I know I'm here. I know how I'm going to get my contribution. I'm ready to watch. So first thing, here we go. There's my little context slide. The first thing to present, and this can just be short, just make sure that you explain what the problem was that you were solving. I've certainly seen designers just dive in and start demoing without saying, the thing that we were trying to do here is, this shows that you actually understand, that you actually understand what the problem is. And if you're in that situation where you're maybe doing agency work and you're working for a client, they really need to understand that you know what the problem was. And it kind of sounds really obvious, but it's not always done. Make sure you explain it in the client's language, not in your own jargon. That way they can also go, okay, they've heard me. I know that they're on the right track. So that's just a little piece, and just important to set the stage. So here's my next context slide. Start with the result. When you are about to present your work, the thing that you want to show off, the thing that you want to be presenting, is the outcome, the final version, the thing that you finally created. Start with that. And you might be like going, what on earth does she mean? Of course I would show that. What I see most often is I see people showing one of two things. They either show their process. So we did this thing, and then we did this other thing, and then we did this other thing, and then this happened, and then we did some stuff, and then we did some more stuff, and here's the thing. Now, when you show it like that, your audience are going to be like, what? Huh? Why are you telling me this? What's going on? Oh, was it that? And you've got them all like, what on earth am I meant to be paying attention to here? The other thing that I often see designers do is not entire, this is a kind of process related, but show the versions of things that they came up with. So, we tried this version of navigation and it didn't quite work for these reasons. And so then we tried this version, or a filter, or a page layout, or whatever it happens to be. And that didn't quite work either. And then we tried this, and this is the one we're recommending. And the thing that's happened in the audience's head is, oh, I looked at that. Hang on, you've moved on. Okay, this is the thing, right? Okay, I'm about to pay attention. What? Huh? You've moved. What am I meant to be looking at? And I kind of think it's obvious that you should show what you came up with, but I don't think it is that obvious. We tell our own stories, and we tell the story from our own perspective. And the story from our own perspective is, I did all these things, and here's the outcome. So we need to start with the outcome first. Two things that people often comment or ask me about that you might be thinking right now is, but what about, all the things that they might need to know about the things that we discarded? So if people have, something in mind, and they're like, why didn't you do it like that? Did you try? They'll ask you at the end. So you don't have to explain all the, paths that you didn't go down. If people are concerned that you missed something or that there was a different approach, they'll ask you. The other thing that people often say to me is, I need to show my process to show my value. I need to show, explain how we did a thing, so they know what went into it. And my blunt answer to that is actually, no, you don't. You need to show what you came up with to show value. And again, if people are curious about your process, or they're curious that you have missed something, or there's some bias, or that you've forgotten something important, they'll ask you. You don't need to front load it all. It just gets too confusing. So I see Christine just posted, from our last presenter, bottom line up front. Yes. All right, so here's another interstitial, a person doing a thing. So when you present your outcome, present it as a person doing a thing. We know that humans love narrative. It's why we do things like scenarios. It's why user stories work really well. It's why we talk to each other and listen and really connect with stories. So my suggestion for presenting the work is to do it in like narrative or scenario form. So set up a little bit of context, like who is this person and what happens first, and then show through your design by talking about them doing a thing. So the example I wrote in the presenting design book is I made up a little example of a father who wanted to buy secondhand children's clothes because kids grow so damn quick, and who wants to buy them new. And so the example was, so I give a bit of context about him. I gave him a name and everything. And then I talked through, like, he wants to buy some kids' clothes. He's also got some to drop off. He wants to find a place nearby where he can both buy and donate. So he goes to this app, this website or whatever. He looks at a nearby geography. He checks that there's going to be parking. He goes down there, he donates, whatever it is. I've told you a story. And then if you're looking at screens at the same time there, you can be like, okay, cool, I know what's happening here. Right. And this is, so another piece of advice around this, it's going to sound a bit odd, is do it once and then do it again. It doesn't have to be exactly the same the second time, but it kind of could be, or you can just do a little bit of variation, or you can say, you know, today he doesn't have anything to drop off, or I don't know. I'm making up examples as I go. The reason I say this, and it seems a bit funny, because from your perspective, it'll feel like you're duplicating something. From the audience perspective, the thing that's happened is, okay, she's told me a story about a guy. I've seen a couple of screens. I didn't really have a good chance to look at them. I'm feeling a bit like I haven't had enough time with this. The second time, you know, this thing where like the first time when you watch a movie, it feels really long, and then potentially you watch it again and it feels like it's kind of quicker. The same thing's happening in our brain when we see the design go through the second time. You're like, okay, cool, I've got the story. Now I can look at these things a bit better. And so they can pay better attention. And so I know it will feel to you really weird to duplicate it. So just figure out a way that you can feel comfortable and not feel like you're literally saying, doing the same thing twice. So you could show just a slightly different scenario. And then another thing to do at this point can really be to show some kind of variation. I really like to show some kind of accessible variation. So this is what it looks like. This is how it works when the person is in this kind of situation, when maybe they don't have good vision, when they are like brand new to it instead of being a bit more experienced, some kind of variation that can help the audience understand that people are going to use something differently. So then you've kind of given 3 decent run-throughs, and the audience has had a fair chance of both understanding the story and also kind of looking at the screens and artifacts. So, you know, a bit of a caveat around this is you won't want to necessarily be presenting something that would take 30 minutes to present the first time. You want to chunk down your work into something that people can get their heads around as well. So don't do enormous presentations of all the things. Do small presentations of, you know, things that they can think about, and that should just you know, be a principle anyway. Let me just see if I've got everything on my notes. Aha. The thing that we're not doing here is a thing called a real estate tour. So we're not saying there's a logo, here's a filter, here's a map, here's a like catalog page. We're putting it in scenario form, because when you do a real estate tour, look at the kitchen, it's got like a stove. People focus on the thing that you're showing them instead of on the story and the way the user's going to use it, which means they're going to ask you things about the thing. If you've given it as a scenario, they'll ask you questions about, you know, the user interacting with it, which is really how we want to get our feedback. Don't use kind of designer jargon through this process. I just gave some examples there. I said navigation, filter, catalog page. It's really easy for us to do this and to point out things like, you know, fonts and type sizes and visual hierarchy. If you start saying these things, people are going to give you feedback on them, and they're probably not the feedback that you want. You probably don't want feedback on fonts, type sizes. And if you do, like, do that just with the people who have the skills to give you those feedback. So yeah, watch out for your jargon. That takes a bit of practice to stop kind of talking your designer talk. So it's a good thing to focus on. And if you do need to draw attention, you know, for example, to a way a map might work, do it after the story. So you've done the story and then you're like, I just want to show you what happens here. I want to show you the kind of options in that filter. I want to show you how this works. And again, they've got the narrative in their head, so that, you know, the feedback sits in a better context. So you can still show the important and cool things you thought about, just sit them within a narrative. So after we've presented, you know, our great stuff, we're going to get feedback. So I'm going to do this in 2 bits here for you. I'm just going to talk about the while you're in presentation mode. And then I'll talk about separately about how we set up a feedback structure. So in presentation mode, again, I said up front to tell people how to contribute feedback. So then you're at the point where you're ready to potentially take feedback. This is where you then reiterate the way that you've asked people to think about feedback. So, but again, I'll talk about some options in a moment. The thing not to do here is to say, so what do you think? Because even if you've set people up super well with, you know, setting their expertise and having a job to do in the meeting, if you say, so what do you think? Top of mind, oh crap, I've got to talk, things are going to come out of their mouth. Don't also ever say, do you like it? Because that's not what you want to know. You don't want to know what they think or what they like. You want to know what is their feedback for you. But again, I'll come back to it in a second. The other thing to let people know in your presentation time is exactly how is their feedback going to be used. So you can actually do this up the front, but it's important to do it at the time. Your clients and yourselves and your teams will have all had situations where they've been asked for feedback, they've given feedback, and their feedback wasn't used, like it didn't turn up. That just makes people feel like you're not listening to them and makes them feel devalued. And, you know, people will react in one of 2 ways. They'll either come out of the blocks at you and like really push, because they need to be heard, or they'll disengage from the process and not actually, you know, contribute the great things that they have in their head. So if they don't feel like they're being valued, you're going to have a bad outcome. So always make sure that you let them know, you know, what you're going to do with this thing. The last part in your presentation there is to thank people, wrap up, and, you know, again, kind of reiterate how the follow-ups will work. So this is where I can jump into this part now and tell you actually about the feedback process. So we're out of our presentation flow. We're kind of into a bit of kind of prep and theory. So there's 2 real ways that you can collect feedback from people. You can do it at the time of the presentation itself, or you can do it later on. And there are pros and cons to both, of course. Feedback at the time is really good for like kind of maintaining a bit of energy, for really showing people that you're listening and that they're contributing. It's good for solving problems like quickly and, you know, as a group having a set of next steps to move on. So that's the benefit of doing things now. The disadvantage of doing things immediately is that the feedback you get will be quite shallow because you've just kind of gone through things, you know, pretty quickly. And you're asking people to think off the top of their head and they've got a whole lot of stuff going on in there. So they'll tell you what, you know, occurs to them now. But a lot of times people then go away and like, I'm totally this person. I go away and then I think about all of the stuff, all of the things and all of the things that will work and all of the things that won't work and why won't it work with the data and why won't it work for all the user needs, you know, and it'll come to me like 2 days later. I'm like, hang on, that makes no sense. So I'm always the person who later on after a meeting is like, I'm sorry, that makes no sense. And it looks like I'm being negative and I'm really not. It's just that I've mulled it over. My preference is to ask people to give their feedback after a little bit of reflection. The feedback you get, as you can probably hear that I kind of reflected on there, it's just it's a bit deeper. They can think about it a bit more. They can think about how it fits with, again, the thing that is their expertise. They can go check up anything if they need, and the feedback is of better quality, and it won't kind of come back at you later on. Like if you've done it immediately, you think you've wrapped it up, and then these things just keep leaking back in when you're like, hang on, we resolved that. It's because that people haven't had time to reflect. Of course, the big disadvantage of doing it in a reflective way later is that you have to, pause. You can't walk out of the room and go just do action straight away. So you need to be able to structure the work to give people a bit of time to get the feedback to you. You also need it to set up a way of getting it to you, whether that's, please email me later on, whether it's like, filling out some kind of survey, whether it's you call them up and say, how'd that go, whatever it is, you need to actually set up a method. And the other thing that can be good in that kind of reflective process is to give people a link to, something like your wireframes or prototypes so that they can, again, have a look at it and catch anything that they missed. So my preference is always to do that, but it can involve a bit of a kind of change to the way your project sequencing might flow. And the other thing you need to do it in both cases, but more so in the reflective, is you need to have a really strong decision-making process. And most teams don't really clearly have this. You need to know why you'll say, okay, cool, yep, we'll do that. You need to know why you'll say, yep, we'll do it, but we'll do it later. And you need to very, very, very much know why you've said, no, we're not going to action that feedback. And then you need it to communicate those things to people. So it actually takes a real level of maturity to be able to say to your stakeholders, I listened to you, we listened to you, we absolutely positively did listen, and like really communicate to them that they're valued and that you did. And for these really solid reasons, we aren't going to do something about the thing that you told us. And it might be, it really just might be scope. It might be, we've heard it from you, but we need to do some research and make sure it's across the board. There's all kinds of genuine reasons. You need to have those genuine reasons. You need to not just have a, what is a characteristic of a slightly immature team where you're like, no, not doing that. And I might eye roll and look at it, do silly faces like that, but I've certainly seen teams behave like that, where they get kind of uppity that somebody told them to do a thing and they don't listen and they just dismiss it. So as I said, if you're behaving like that, then the stakeholders won't feel like they can contribute, and they'll either start causing trouble by going around you or always, sniping at you, or they'll just go, they never listen. I'm not even going to bother. And then something bad will happen later. So you really have to have that kind of maturity around listening to people. Because all of this is about, ultimately, making our products better by including, as much expertise from a lot of smart people. Sometimes it looks like kind of designers get to figure out all the stuff, but really what designers are doing is listening to all of the things in their project sphere and doing the representation of it, and then showing it back to people to get feedback and make things make a product better. Last little section is just that's called other prep. I want to just mention two little things. Do make sure you rehearse your presentation. So particularly a person doing a thing, make sure that you've rehearsed that you've walked through your prototype, that you know the words you're going to say. The important thing about rehearsal is once you've done it, your brain's like, oh yeah, cool. I know how to do that. I know what we're doing here. I don't then have to pay attention to everything quite so much. I don't have to pay attention to being nervous. I kind of know how this works. So that's why rehearsal is really good. So always rehearse. If you're presenting face-to-face, make sure you have somebody to take notes. It's really hard to do the storytelling, carry the meeting, do the interaction, and also make notes about anything that's coming up at the time. If you're presenting remotely, recording the session is fabulous. So even if you're collecting feedback later, people will ask you questions at the time, and, give you thoughts at the time. So you want to make sure that you don't lose those, because they're an important part of listening as well. So if you're face to face, just make sure somebody else is taking the notes. If you don't have a UX kind of colleague, then somebody on the client side can be doing it, as long as you've got someone to take that load off you. So that's the end. There you go. That's the end of my slides. Now we can do questions. I haven't been looking at the questions as we've been going, so Julia can throw some at me, or you can start typing like mad now.
Thank you, Donna. That was great. And I like the image of ending with an empty card. Yeah, you did it.
Well, it's actually the back of a card, but I faked it.
The magic of presenting. Yeah. Thank you. That was great. So as Donna said, if you want to start typing in questions, or if you want to raise your hand and come off mute, whatever you're most comfortable with. I had one question to start. You mentioned early on that you're trying to get people to respond from their point of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips on getting them into that mindset? Because that's something I've seen people struggle with a lot. That they'll come in all different ways. So
there's probably, I think there's a lot of different kind of ways you can do it depending on your team and your team structure. So if these are folks you can, like, you could say ahead of time, hey, I'm going to show this thing on Tuesday. Can you keep an eye on this? Can you, like, I really need to understand whether it's feasible. So you can, like, clue them up at the beginning. Beforehand. You can then, like, just literally say it in the meeting, because it helps then the room know what they're doing. It takes a little bit of time, but it's better than not taking the time and then not getting the right feedback. So you can just go around and go, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you not do that? These are things that we're looking for today. But a lot of the trick is knowing like who the audience is and what kinds of things they might be concerned about. If you're like a kind of highly political organization and people come out of the woodwork and throw garbage on your project, which has certainly happened to me a whole lot, it's really worth asking around and saying, is there anything that you know about this person and the way they usually behave? Like, I've certainly been in organizations where a person will, like, either say the same thing week after week, but you don't know it, and don't know to expect it, and it feels like it's real and genuine, but really it's just their hobby horse. Or where people will be all all kind and lovely and smiles to your face, but then we'll do things behind your back. So yeah, it's a really important part of, like, just understanding that audience and what they are there for and why and what might be about to happen. Good question, thank you.
great, thank you. Roger?
Hi, Donna. Thank you very much. And I've read your book.
Oh, look, I don't know why you're here. I said it all in the book.
So I've run into some challenges in presenting design work, and your book was very helpful, by the way. Thank you. I haven't actually had an opportunity to really put it to action, because the project that I'm on presently, the scenario is that I'm not coordinating the meeting. It's all virtual, and I'm not coordinating the meeting. I'm literally a guest, and the team has evolved organically over time, and more people have become attached to this meeting from all disciplines on the project. So we got dev teams, we got subject matter experts, and system engineers and such. And everybody wants to contribute, and sometimes they like to contribute outside of their area of expertise. And I guess we're all guilty of doing that. One of the things that I find is probably the most challenging to progress in the meeting, and you really struck a note with it in today's presentation, when it comes to having a really strong decision process. Because one of the things I struggle with is that not only do we have people that are either trying to solve other people's problems for them, or they're providing some disruptive feedback that's not contributing to the overall progress of the project, such as, a decision was made, it was designed and whether, or we agreed on a design path. And yet, because it wasn't somebody else's idea, they're going to come back and say, reopen the can of worms and say, okay, well, here's try and repitch their solution because it benefits them in some way. And maybe it's just because they feel it's a better path. I don't know. What would you say is a good way to maybe curb that? And I know you talked about the reflective feedback and giving people time to do that. I think the challenge that I'm facing is that this has kind of gone so far off the reservation as far as organization that it is kind of like a Wild West show, and I don't have the mouse on the meeting, so to speak, to say, okay, this is how we're going to run it, this is how we're going to do it, because it's not my meeting. So I'm basically there presenting, and I've got, maybe 3 or 4 wild cards that are going to come in and either rehash topics. And as a result, things don't move forwards. We end up spending a lot of time churning on particular aspects of the project.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in a hard situation, and I get to, kind of present here's a thing that might work in some places, but isn't going to answer all problems. It's certainly not going to answer all human problems, and those real complexities around personalities and control and politics. So you said you don't have control of the whole meeting. You still have control of your bit of it. So you still can put your foot down and for your bit of it and say, do you know what? Today we're going to do it. You could say, I'm trying a new thing. Today I'm going to do my bit like this, and you're going to respond to me like this. This sometimes is hard depending on personality and where you kind of sit. But if you've always let people walk all over you and tell you whatever they think, and I'm absolutely not saying that you do this because I don't know you, and I'm not interpreting it from what you said, but they will. If you, I'm usually kind of, fairly silly, but sometimes I will just be like, this is how we're doing this today, all right?
Yeah, I do put my foot down. Yeah, I really do put my foot down on things, but one of the I guess, an important part that I omitted was that the key stakeholder or the decision maker is the subject matter expert, the project leader, and that individual tends to want to appease everybody and make a decision based on the group consensus. Yep. And so while I can put my foot down and say this is really the best practice because of consistency, predictability, we're reusing design patterns, and this changes everything, and it has we're throwing a big rock into a small pond by making that, or taking that path versus this path. And so I can, really present all of the reasons why we went one way versus the other. And again, these are decisions that have already sort of been agreed upon. Yeah. But then when it gets thrown back up on the table, the key decision maker who really does, put the hammer down and say, this is what we aren't doing, they tend to waffle on it and want to have 100% group consensus instead of saying, okay, we're going to take this path and, alienate, quote unquote, a percentage of the attendees. It seems like maybe I ought to just present to that person initially and have rationale, and then they at least are able to weigh that in their decision making without all of the noise coming from everybody else.
It increases their expertise as well if you can present to them and explain, the reason that I've done it like this is for, and then there's where you start using your jargon. I did this for these reasons, and this is what we found, and you can raise their level of expertise so that, and it's not being manipulative, it's just giving them more information and not making them make quick decisions, and give them some reflecting time as well. I think it's just a hard situation because you're dealing with personality, not process.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The process is become virtually non-existent in
it's really frustrating, isn't it? Just going over and over and over things.
Right.
So spend a bit of time unpacking why that happens as well. It sounds like you've got some ideas, but it can be good to go, what is really happening here? Why are they going at what I thought we decided that?
Right, yeah. Great, thank you.
Great. Steve Simon had a somewhat similar question. Steve, do you have anything to add, or if you want to expand on your question or anything, just let me know.
Who was there too?
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Can you hear me? Yeah. The previous question, I'd sent that question in just as the previous question was being asked, which is kind of humorous, but same kind of thing. I'm really new at this. I'm a brand new UI designer, and literally my first freelance project, kind of went off the rails in a certain level of professionalism, albeit in a junior capacity to the project. And the stakeholder was just, adamant in taking it in another direction. And I just couldn't reel it in. And it was frustrating, so same kind of thing. And this was even just one-on-one,
I have some different advice for you, actually.
Yeah.
Something, again, I'm not like interpreting anything what you said, I'm just kind of going on my experience working with people who are often quite new to the field. Often when you're new, you're really actually not sure, like you're having a go at something and you're trying
That's
out
true.
an idea, and then you're, presenting it, and, people are going to try to walk all over you because they can tell. So the thing for in those kind of situations is it can help to say, the things I actually really, and like saying this to yourself, the things I actually really know are this, this, and this. So like I made these decisions for these reasons and I'm really confident about them for reasons. Might be for because you've done research on it, or you got some advice from somebody more senior, or, I understand these pieces and I'm solid on them. But then like kind of let go on the pieces where you may not, because sometimes the reason that stakeholders will, give you, negative counterproductive feedback is because you might actually just be wrong. And it's okay to go, I'm thinking around doing it this way, but I'm interested in your expertise, and let them talk about their expertise in, their subject matterness. And if they, start telling you about things on screen, I had a discussion with some of my colleagues this morning. They started telling me stuff about categories, and I'm like, that makes no sense. I'll look after that bit. So yeah, if you can be confident about these, I'm confident on these things, I need help with these things, then you've given them an opening for as well, like to go, okay, cool, I can help. People just want to be part of it. So give them things that they can be part of and lock off, conceptually the things that you're confident about. But it is really hard when you're new, because sometimes, like I know that I can say a bunch of things because I have a lot of experience and I can justify them, and I'm just pulling it out of my experience. And you have to get that experience first, so you can just go, no, actually, I'm right this I'm right this time. So yeah, be reflective about that and be open to having people help out.
Thank you.
Great, good question, Steve. Thank you. So we'll go to Christine, and then Cherry, and then Carrie. So, go ahead, Christine.
Thanks. I was just going to say, and actually, Steve, your situation, I feel kind of ties back to my world. I spent a long time as a graphic designer before shifting to product design. And I was going to comment that the bottom line up front is so different from the world that I came from, where presenting design work was really about this, almost like creating this like atmosphere and this mood and this narrative with this incredible buildup. And then there's like grand finale, and it's like everyone's like, ah. And it was like the presentation of the design work was almost equally about designing the presentation as it was the thing that you designed and needed to present. And
that's why I said right up front, the caveat is that this isn't brand and logo kind of work.
Yeah.
Because on that, you do often need to tell that big story.
Yeah, so I actually have really appreciated shifting more toward like a true functional presentation. And to just a sort of a quick commentary on Steve, your question. I spent 17 years as a graphic designer presenting work, and it's interesting because I think what I've learned now as a product designer is, and I wish I knew when I was a graphic designer, is that, you know, and when you're presenting your UX work or product design work, ideally you're rooting it in reasons and decisions, rather than this was my creative, you know, genius that I just am giving to you or whatever. And I have over time learned to really take feedback that I'm hearing that I think is misguided, even if it's well-intentioned, which I often think it is. They, like you said, they just want to help or have a role in the discussion. But always trying to bring that back to, how will this help us? How will that get us closer to the solution? Or how does that suggestion fit with the problem that we're trying to solve? And I often, in graphic design and in product design, will say, I think that's a really great suggestion or issue that you've raised. And I'm going to really consider that and try to, you know, interpret that in a way that will help solve the problem, rather than just be like, okay, I'll make that change.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, show that you're a part of the thinking process as well. Because you've got to go away and you've got to puzzle it out. You've got to figure out the thing that they said and go, you know, how does it really, does it fit? Oh, I think there's probably something I didn't tell them. Yeah.
Great. Cherry has a question. How much is supported by research or data? I've recently started using the SQUAC, SQUACK, feedback framework from Julie Jensen. It's brilliant. Is that?
So I haven't had that framework. Cherry,
yeah, it's brand new, and I'll be happy to put a link in a presentation that she gave to us at our local group, and she's putting some books out. But it is basically saying, this is the way we're going to do feedback, and even if the person other side doesn't know, it gives you a way to receive it in those ways and how to put it within that. So the S is suggestion. Like, is this a suggestion, or are you making a statement, you know, or you whatever. The second one is a question. Do you have a question about something? And that sort of thing. And then the U is, what is the user signal of the, you know, the research. And then A is an accidental, like a typo or something that can be fixed within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Say anything, just send it to him discreetly, circle it, send it back, whatever. Keep your mouth shut about it. Nobody cares. And that's not why they're here. And then the C is critical. Is this critical for business needs or user needs? This cannot be forgotten. And we were so lucky to be able to use this. You know, I'm sure we would have caught it a different way, but this was really, really helpful, because you're able to call it out to the, you know, to the client, and they're like, I don't know about that. And we're like, is it critical? Like, now we're putting a label on it. You know, is what you're saying critical to this? Is this a make or break issue? And yes, it is. So, and then the K is a kudos, and the K, the kudos is supposed to be specific. You can say great job. That doesn't help. You know, it's not helpful feedback at all to say that's a great job. Say, you know, I like how you tied in, you know, the user research to the solution, that sort of thing. There's another framework that I also wanted to bring up that I learned from Ryan Rumsey. He is secondwavedive.com is where he gave courses. I took this course last year, and it's kind of like a transition between, you know, mid-level career to leadership. So it's like, now you're starting to present these design things to executives and things like that, and you kind of want to speak their language a little bit. And it's saying, putting it into the format of SCR, which is solution, state your solution, I mean, your situation, sorry, state your situation, explain that it's the problem that you're trying to solve. Like, let's all make sure we're on the same page and that we're looking at the same thing and bring our minds back to what we're doing. It's kind of like what you were saying before, review everything, kind of go back, reset their brain. Okay, now we're in the story, right? So you're in the situation, and then the challenge. The C is the challenge. Hi, kitty cat. And the challenge, state your challenges. You know, it may be 1, maybe 5, whatever the challenges are. And because of these challenges or constraints, you can use it interchangeably. And then the R, you can use as many R's as you want to, and that's resolutions. And that's different from solutions, because solutions is something that's finalized. Resolutions are, these are some possible avenues. And even putting a, maybe even a SWOT analysis to that. So, I was able to do that and put that into practice and give that to, these are 3 ways we can solve this problem. And this is the recommended way because of this, and that. It saves money. It's, it's quick turnaround, blah, blah, blahs, less of a lift, no code, that kind of stuff. And then, present it that way. So there's 2 different ways, depending on who you're talking to, who your audience is. It's really,
they sound amazing.
Yeah.
I think I missed it. I think I missed a bit on my notes where I was meant to tell you that to make sure feedback is like concrete, actionable, and has examples. And a framework. I really like the look of that SQUAC framework. I'm definitely going to buy that book.
It is.
I really like that, like categorizing it according to suggestion and question and
right.
Things.
And it's
that
all
helps people clarify it in their own head as well.
Right.
Here's a suggestion, or actually this is really critical.
Right.
Means they have to think about, what am I doing here? Not just.
And like I said, even if they don't know the framework, you can kind of guide it to within that framework. So it's really helpful. I suggest watching that YouTube and let me know, connect with Julie Jensen. She's amazing.
Looks really good. I'm going to post the YouTube into the thing. There we go. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go look at that. That looks really interesting. Thank you for sharing it.
Sure.
Great, thank you, Cherry. Carrie Lee has a question. She says, thank you, Donna. Just wondering if a presentation on IA work looks similar to this, or do you have other tips?
So Carrie, I think mostly, this is going to be maybe an odd opinion. I think mostly you shouldn't be presenting IA work to kind of maybe a broad audience. IA work isn't something that everybody necessarily should have contribution to, because often their expertises aren't around it. So you may not want to do this at a showcase or to a kind of client presentation. And IA work for most people is abstract, so also can be hard for them to interpret. I don't know if your idea of IA work and mine are gelling right now either though. And IA work eventually turns into a representation, on screens. So IA work might turn into part of the filtering for products, or it might turn into, the navigation and structure. So what I usually would do here is, if I need feedback on like the real kind of conceptual stuff, is only talk with the people who can understand and give good feedback on that, not necessarily present it. And then for a broader audience, present it in context, like actually show how it affects filtering, how it affects search, how it represents in tags and products and stuff. And there, for me, IA work, I'm thinking about, categories, structures, metadata on content, a lot of invisible things, not just kind of visible navigation.
Got it. Thank you.
So let me know if that made sense.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Thank you. I just saw Christine's comment. Love this, not distracting at all. That was the cat tail right in front of your face.
And Christine also said, I agree that some work isn't subject to people's opinions. Curious if you want to expand on that.
Well, I think it goes back to this notion that I think in product design and UX, it's typically rooted in insight and understanding, and it's not necessarily as subjective or an interpretation, I think, as much as like graphic design, where it's almost like anything's up for grabs in a design, that if somebody wants to just, you know, dig into it and nitpick it or whatever. But I think what you were saying, Donna, you know, IA is, you know, it's pretty functional, and it's it can be informed by our interpretation of information, but it's like, it's functional. So if someone's critiquing it, it should be from the perspective of you know,
yeah, if you're talking with a subject matter person about like whether you've got the concepts right in, you know, in a new categorization scheme, then it's really functional. Like, did I actually understand this right? And does this terminology really represent, you know, the concepts here? But that's probably a one-on-one, you know, how are we doing it right here, more than,
do you
hey,
like
room, we've decided to go like this.
Yeah, and any of the navigation and information architecture can be validated with tree testing very quickly, very quickly.
Yeah, very, very quickly. I'll tell you something. I invented tree testing. I don't know if people know that.
You did?
I literally did. I'm not even just bragging or telling a kid. I literally invented it. And then I was teaching it. I used to do like a way of testing it on index cards. And I was teaching the folks who are now at Optimal Workshop in a workshop, and they're like, we could turn that into a tool really easily. And I'm like, yeah, you could.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Thank you. Yes, tree jack. Yes, tree jack is what they call it. But
I can trace that exact. I can.
And card sorting. That. Yes,
yeah.
And card sorting. Yes. Well, we're in the room not only with your celebrity, but you're a tool maker.
I was going to say, we are among UX royalty. I'm honored. How did you come up with that?
Well, I was in, so this is like goes back way to the late 90s, and I was in the Australian Bureau of Statistics, so the equivalent of US Census Bureau, I suspect, or, you know, kind of like Bureau of Labor Stats. And I really, like, we were presenting our statistical content to people based on the name of the publication that we published it in. And not everybody understood that, like specialists did, but not everybody else. And I wanted to bust that apart and present the information according to, you know, the topic. So economic indicators and labour force and I don't know, how home ownership, things like that, things that would make sense. And I had to figure out a way of coming up with a hierarchy and testing it. So I literally wrote out like a hierarchy on index cards. So it was the top level, and then what was the next level for each, and then next level. It was quite deep because this is a big topic hierarchy. And then on a separate set of index cards, I wrote a bunch of scenarios. So where would you go if you needed to find the unemployment rate? And I got people to, you know, touch the index card. I'm really good at inventing stuff like that. Like, to me, it was just like, I need to figure out a thing. Okay, I'll do a thing.
How did you come up with how did you name it tree testing?
I didn't. I called it, it's on boxes and arrows in the old days. I called it card-based classification evaluation, because it was at the time when we talked about usability evaluation. We didn't say testing. We didn't say user tests. We mostly didn't say usability testing. We would say usability evaluation. So I called it card-based classification evaluation, which is really long. The tree jack folks came up with tree testing.
Oh, nice.
I didn't invent the word. I invented the concept.
The Optimal Workshop people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I think
Amazing.
you just blew Yushi's mind, and Carrie says thank you so much for inventing it. So you definitely have
You're all very welcome.
This is true, like,
Oh, we're fangirling.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, this is true, like, nerdery. And
And to me, I'm just like, you know, I'm just a person who, sometimes thinks things and sometimes writes them down, and then, you know, comes and has a chat to you all. I'm not at all special or famous. I just am a normal person.
yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your brain with
Right.
us.
Brilliant.
I'm very welcome. You're very welcome. I'll always share my brain. Just while we talk about sharing my brain, you are most welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me easy as like just search Donna Spencer. Do just tell me like that we met today, because I do get lots of invites and I don't have time to look at them all properly sometimes. Just say, hey, saw you today, and I'll then definitely just click the accept button straight away.
Thank you.
And then Teresa had an observation that I really like. One thing I noticed, Donna starts with scenarios, which I love.
Yeah, I design scenario first as well. Like when I'm going to design something, I actually kind of write out that story, not journey map wise, but more of a kind of narrative of what's this person doing, and like so I can write like 3 pages of, you know, kind of like a novel before I start designing a thing.
Great. I think Yushi is making the current General Assembly Boston crew very jealous with how they're spending their evening. I'm so happy. That's great. Are there any last thoughts or questions from anyone, or Donna, anything?
That's all for me. I've remembered to tell you where to find me. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Thanks. And thanks for switching it up without slides.
Yes.
I really much prefer this. It's
Gave a presentation about presenting without slides.
Nice. So I'm going to ruin that by sharing my screen, which is a last slide. That come up? Can you see our little thank you slide?
Yes.
Okay. So our next 2 meetings are February 22nd. We'll have Kevin Philpott, head of product design at Pine Insurance, who will be speaking about how UX drives innovation. And then in March, we'll have a presentation on virtual reality design by Kirk Membry, who is from XR Terra. And if you have any ideas, you're always welcome to email us or drop them in Slack, or just find us wherever we are. We love new ideas. I think it's gonna, Donna, you set the bar real high for 2022 for New Hampshire UXPA.
great.
I'm
also like, I mean, I'm also, I'm like about 50 and I've been on stage since I was 6. So I am a comfortable presenter and comfortable just winging it. The standard, no people who don't have 44 years of on-stage experience don't have to be me. They can be themselves and be nervous and less confident, overconfident.
If I may, I'd love to build on that point. As a program director, we still have a couple more months that we're trying to fill on our 2022 roster. And that is definitely something that I would encourage everyone to consider. It's kind of nice right now during a virtual environment. I think our attendance rate runs typically around 50 people, sometimes more, sometimes less. So if you want to try presenting, this I think is a really safe, welcoming space. And surely, you know, we're always looking for just any sort of unique spin on all the topics that we typically kind of discuss. So really, it's your opportunity to kind of be creative at the same time too. So feel free to reach out to me directly. There's our email is on the slide, and you can find me in all the different places, but definitely would love to hear from anyone who is maybe looking to try their hand at presenting.
Yeah, and I think that last bit, Donna, on we don't all have to be this comfortable right now. I think that right there is some really good advice as well. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, you have lots of thanks coming in the chat, and I think you'll be pretty busy.
My LinkedIn's already going blip, 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 which is great. It's very exciting. I'm very excited to connect with you all.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again, Donna.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you for everyone for joining us, and see you next month. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.